Hello everyone, I am Arti and today I am going to presenting my research on graph neural network with data augmentation for single channel EEG based seizure classification. I know the title sounds little heavy. Now don't worry, I promise by the end of this it will make complete sense. So at the core, what is this research is about? Can we teach a computer to detect epileptic seizure from brain signals the more accurately and the more reliably? That's the real question we are trying to answer here. So let's get into it. So first, why is this even problem worth solving? Epilepsy affects around 50 million people worldwide. That's not a small number. And the way seizures are currently detected is through something called EEG, an electroencephalogram, which basically record the electrical activity of the brain. Now the issue is, recording an EEG is not a simple. It's require a trained neurologist to sit and manually go through these long, complex and signal recordings. That make a lot of time. It's expensive and honestly it's quite exhausting. The different doctors can sometimes interpret the same signal differently. So the question became, can deep learning help us automate this? Previous methods like CNN and LSTM have been tried and they do okay. But here's the thing. This method treats data in a grid-like structure, like an image or a sequence. But EEG signals the way different parts of the brain are connected, the way different time segments relate to each other. And that is naturally a graph structure, not a grid. And that's exactly what is this research explored. Using graph neural networks to better capture those relationships and ultimately improve the seizure detection. Alright, let's talk about the data we used. This study used the Born EEG dataset, which is one of the most widely used, well-known dataset in epilepsy research. It has 5 classes of EEG recordings: healthy eye open, healthy eye close, interictal signals, meaning between seizures, and then actual seizure activity. And now here's the challenge that's very common in medical data. We don't have enough samples. Getting labeled seizure data is difficult and expensive. So what we do? We use data augmentation, which basically means we create more training samples from the ones we already have in a smart way. We use technique like segment jittering, which is adding small random shift to the signals. Another one, node dropout, which is randomly removing some graph nodes during training. And the third one, edge perturbation, slightly changing the connections in the graph. And the last, feature noise injection, which is adding control noise to input features. These techniques force the model to not just memorize and the data but actually learn from it, which is very important. Now, before we can even build a graph, we need to extract meaningful information from EEG signal. So here, how we did that. Each EEG recording is divided into 8 fixed time segments. Think of it like cutting a song into 8 equal parts. From each segment, we extract 2 types of features. First, statistical features. Things like mean, standard deviation, energy, entropy. These capture signals behavior of the signal. Second one is spectral features, which includes the power in different frequency bands like delta, theta, alpha, beta and gamma. These are the classic brainwave bands that neurologists already use in clinical practice. So now each of these 8 segments become a node in our graph, which carry its own feature vector. This is where the bridge between raw EEG data and graph structure begins. So once we have our 8 nodes ready, each representing a segments, that the next step is how do we connect them? We calculate the correlation between every pair of segments. So if 2 segments behave similarly, they are strongly connected. And if they are very different, the connection is weak or absent. This gives us an adjacency matrix, which is basically a map of all connections in a graph. and these adjacency matrices define the age of our graph. So now we have a proper graph, nodes with features and age showing relationships, and this graph is what gets fed into the graph convolutional network for classification. The beauty of this approach is that we are not just looking at each segment in isolation. We are capturing how different parts of the brain signal relate to each other, and that's how richer this information. Now let's talk about the actual model architecture. We experimented with 3 versions of the graph convolutional network: a 3-layer, a 4-layer, and a 5-layer GCN. So to see which depth work best, each layer in GCN is GCN convolutional, and the standard graph convolutional operation that followed by ReLU activation, batch normalization to stabilize, and training and dropout to prevent overfitting. After all the GCN layers, we apply global mean pooling, which takes all the nodes representation and creates a single graph level representation, and that the final vector is passed to classifier. The reason we compare different depth is because more layer means the model can capture information from further away in the graph, but too many layers can also hurt performance due to something called over smoothing, so we need to fit that sweet spot. So for training, we use binary cross entropy with logits as our loss function, which is a standard for binary classification task. To make sure our results are reliable and not just lucky, we use 10-fold cross validation. This means we split the data into 10 parts, train on 9, train test on 1, and rotate. So every single sample gets tested at some point. An interesting thing we observed was early stopping. The model converged around just 11 to 12 epochs. That's actually quite fast, and it shows the graph features we extracted are quite informative. The training curve shows validation accuracy steadily going up and loss going down, which is good sign the model is training and not just memorizing. Okay, so now the results. The 3-layer GCN gave us 91% accuracy and AUC of 84%. Solid performance. The 4th-layer GCN also gave us 91% accuracy. This is same as 3-layer, but the AUC jumped to the 94%. So it's capturing the class separability much better. And the 5th-layer GCN, this one gave us 96% and 96% accuracy and 95% of AOC. That's the best performance. So clearly, as we go deeper, the model is able to capture richer, more complex relationships within the EEG graph, and that directly translate to better classification. This confirms that graph depth matters, and for EEG seizure detection, a 5-layer GCN is the right choice. So cross validation robustness. Okay. So now accuracy alone doesn't tell the whole story. A model that gets 96% on split but fails badly on another is not useful in practice. So let's look on the cross validation result. The average test accuracy across all 10 folds was 89.84%. with a standard deviation of 0.0483. The best fold reached almost 97% accuracy, and the most folds stayed above 89%. This tells us the model is consistent. It is generalized well, and it's not just getting lucky on one particular data split. In a medical context, the kind of consistency is extremely important because we need a model we can actually trust. So to wrap up what we have actually shown here, we shown that treating EEG data as a graph work by combining local segment feature with a global connectivity structure of the brain signal, we get a much richer representation than a traditional methods. Data augmentation played a key role in making the model robust despite having limited level data, which is very real constraint in medical AI. Among all the models we tested, the 5-layer GCN gives the best balance of the accuracy and reliabilities. And of course, there is still more work to be done. So its future direction includes some real-time clinical deployments, which means making this usable in hospitals. Model explainabilities, so the neurologist can actually understand why the model is making up predictions, and testing on larger multi-channel EEG dataset. But as a step toward automated graph-based seizure detection, this research shows a very promising path forward. Now this is the list of all the key papers and sources that which work builds upon, including the original Bond EEG dataset paper, Foundation Graph Convolutional Network literature, and related work on data augmentation EEG classifications. And that brings me to end my presentation, and I hope this give all a clear picture of how graph-based learning can be applied to something as important as epilepsy detection, and it's a meaningful direction for medical AI.